Welcome to my channel. I'm Golden Nubian and I'm your Elden Ring lore keeper. On this channel, we'll be discussing and crafting theories around various lore of Elden Ring. Today's my first video and I'll be discussing Malenia, one of my favorite characters. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you all enjoy. Let's start by answering the question, who is Malenia? Malenia is the one-armed Valkyrie, the severed, the undefeated swordswoman, and most famously, the Blade of Miquella. She is one of two children born of Queen Marika the Eternal and her second husband, Elden Lord Radagon, alongside her twin brother, Miquella the Unalloyed. Malenia alongside her brother are Empyreans. Empyreans are special beings due to the fact that they are born of a single god, which makes them potentially able to one day replace Queen Marika as a new god of the coming age. You might be wondering, how could they be Empyreans if they're born of two parents? Queen Marika and Elden Lord Radagon are the same person. Many people have speculated whether Marika and Radagon share one mind, or if they are two minds inhabiting the same body, or if Radagon is a manifestation of the greater will created to oppose and control Marika. This is something that I will absolutely dig further into in the future, but for now, just understand that Marika and Radagon are the same entity. Even though Malenia and Miquella will be born of Queen Marika, who is truly a god, they both are born afflicted. Malenia was born stricken with the scarlet rot, and Miquella was cursed with the body of an eternally young child. We know this because after fighting Malenia, we receive an item, Remembrance of the Rot Goddess. It says Remembrance of Malenia, Goddess of Rot, hewn into the Earth Tree. Miquella and Malenia are both the children of a single god. As such, they are both Empyreans, but suffered afflictions from birth. One was cursed with eternal childhood, and the other harbored rot within. I'll briefly explain exactly what the scarlet rot is to give you a better understanding of how serious this sickness is and how it affected Malenia. The scarlet rot is associated with the outer god of rot, who we speculate is using Malenia as a catalyst to enforce their will. Unfortunately, we don't know much about the outer gods, except for the fact that they are mysterious and powerful beings with no physical form that have influenced the events in the lands between in order to enact their will as they see fit. The scarlet rot is a highly dangerous sickness that spreads like a horrible plague. Anyone or anything that comes into contact with it will be corrupted. Bodies deform, limbs fall off, and it even eats away at your mind and is capable of changing entire landscapes. It literally tore Malenia apart from within. She lost several limbs and at some point in her life, possibly in her adulthood, even lost her eyesight. I can only imagine what it was like for Malenia growing up in constant agony. I know this had to be hard on her and hard on Miquella. Remember, Miquella truly loved his sister. I believe he would have done anything to stop this terrible disease, so he worked tirelessly and nonstop to help his sister. Unfortunately, despite all of his hard work, he was unable to find a cure, but hope was not lost. Miquella created a needle made of unalloyed gold. During our playthrough, we meet a woman named Millicent, who is deeply afflicted with the scarlet rot. She can barely speak and is writhing in pain while this sickness destroys her from within and even inflicts her with nightmares. Her father figure, Sage Gowry, asks us to find an unalloyed needle deep in the swamps of Aeonia and give it to her. This needle miraculously stalls the rot in Millicent's body, allowing her to walk and regain clarity of mind even with the rot still inside of her. I believe this same effect also happened to Malenia. I can only imagine Miquella's excitement. Finally, Malenia is able to most likely speak and walk and not be burdened as harshly by the rot taking over her body. Even though he was unable to cure the rot or remove it from her, this was a huge victory for the both of them. At some point in Malenia's life, she met a blind swordsman who had sealed away the outer god of rot. How he did this isn't stated in any text, but a few items give us a deeper look into Malenia and this talented swordsman, their relationship, and the fighting style that Malenia would eventually master. The first item is the prosthesis wearer heirloom, a talisman engraved with a scene from a heroic tale. Though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor, his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. On this talisman, we see Malenia and her mentor teaching her his flowing sword technique. Having lost many limbs entirely to the scarlet rot, we see Malenia wearing an arm prosthetic and possibly two leg prosthetics. I would like to theorize that Miquella also created these prosthetics out of unalloyed gold since it worked previously to stop the effects of scarlet rot. To get a closer look into the blind swordsman, we can look at the blue dancer charm and the flowing curved sword. The blue dancer charm reads, a cloth doll depicting a dancer garbed in blue, an ancient heirloom of some sort. The dancer in blue represents a fairy who in legend bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was rot itself. The flowing curved sword reads, legends speak of a master of the sword, garbed in blue, and his curved blade that was patterned after flowing water. His strong attack unleashes a series of strikes akin to a dance, offering a glimpse into the legend. From these descriptions, we can come to the conclusion that this blind swordsman with his flowing sword technique was truly a master. How was he able to seal away the outer god of rot through his technique? To my knowledge, we don't have any text or dialogue that allude to this, but all we need to know at the moment is that he was powerful enough to do this. Malenia's personal blade, the Hand of Malenia reads, blade built into Malenia's prosthetic arm. Through consecration, it is resistant to rot. Malenia's war prosthesis symbolize her victories. Some claim to have seen wings when the weapon was raised aloft, wings of fierce determination that have never known defeat. The unique skill is waterfowl dance. She performs a series of one-footed leaps in the manner of a waterfowl to unleash a swift yet graceful slashing combo. Malenia excelled under his lessons and became a true warrior without equal. No one could touch her. She became a figure of worship, fear, and admiration. Her fiercely loyal Clean Rot Knights vowed to fight alongside her, fully devoted to her even though they themselves were afflicted and suffering with the same scarlet rot. As I talked about earlier, Malenia and Miquella are incredibly close. So close that Malenia became Miquella's sworn blade and protector. Even though Miquella was able to stop the outer god's influence on Malenia through his unalloyed gold needle and stall the effects of the rot within her, he still hadn't completely removed it from her. Also, he hadn't freed himself of his curse of eternal childhood. He needed a power that could rival the Erd Tree. He abandoned the Golden Order and created the Halic Tree. The creation of the Halic Tree was an attempt to create his very own version of the Erd Tree. This was meant to be a divine tree that had all the power of the Erd Tree, but without the influence of the Greater Will. I personally theorize that it was also supposed to eventually house the Elden Ring and usher in a new era for whichever twin achieved godhood. Miquella and the Halic Tree deserve their own dedicated future video, but the short version is that the Halic Tree quickly became a refuge for Miquella, Malenia, and anyone outcasted by the Golden Order or deemed unworthy of grace. Next, I want to talk about the Shattering, a very important period in time to understanding Malenia's story and Elden Ring's lore as a whole. The Shattering is another whole topic that deserves its own video, but basically, Queen Marika destroyed the Elden Ring and Radagon desperately tried to repair it. Marika, and by default Radagon since they are one, were punished by the Greater Will and imprisoned inside of the Erd Tree. The shards of the Elden Ring were scattered across the lands to the demigods. Thus began the War of the Shattering over the great runes they now possessed. The Shattering of the Elden Ring corrupted the Golden Order, resulting in the lands between falling to ruin and later being abandoned by the Greater Will. After many victories, Malenia's final opponent was Star Scourge Radahn, her demigod half-brother who had stopped the very stars for reasons that we can only speculate. We know the stars are heavily tied to fate. I believe he used the gravity magic to stop the stars and halt Ronnie from achieving her goal of being free from the greater will in Two Fingers. I also believe, possibly unintentionally, it stopped Miquella from truly fulfilling his goal of ascending to godhood. For now, understand that Radon wanted honor, glory, and a true duel with a warrior of exceptional skill to prove his strength while upholding the Golden Order and the status quo. I believe Malenia understood that Radon was the final obstacle for Miquella to achieve his dream of godhood and her last chance to be free of the Scarlet Rot. Defeat was not an option. Even being undefeated and giving her all to defeating Radon, the battle was a stalemate, with Radon appearing as if he was getting the better of Malenia. Radon was stronger than any opponent she had ever faced. If she wanted to defeat him, she'd have to give up everything. Again, defeat was not an option. All of Miquella's hopes and dreams of ascending to godhood, curing the Scarlet Rot, creating a new order, and growing the Halic tree was on the line. Malenia, wanting this more than anything, sacrificed her pride, dignity, body, morals, and possibly her life in a final last-ditch effort. Deliberately or not, Malenia's unalloyed golden needle that had been holding back the outer god of Rot's influence broke, and she impaled Radon with her sword and gave in fully to the Scarlet Rot. Malenia created an eerily beautiful scarlet Aeonia that bloomed into a giant explosion of scarlet rot. By doing this, she was granted unimaginable power, but the Scarlet Rot advanced significantly in her body. Malenia's bloom devastated Caelid and turned the region into a swamp-infested wasteland, with Scarlet Rot transforming the landscape into a corrupted, uninhabitable version of itself. Even though Malenia's destructive bloom essentially destroyed all of Caelid, he wasn't able to kill Radon, whose great rune helped him to resist the rot. Radon lost his mind completely and wandered the wastelands as a shadow of his former self. When we the Tarnished find him, we discover he tragically became a mindless cannibal feasting on the corpses left in the battle, moving only off of instinct while still holding the stars with his gravitational magic. Malenia was left in an unresponsive, slumbering-like state. Finlay, one of her Cleanrot knights, carried her all the way back to the Halic tree, fighting all types of foes on the way back, dying in the process. The timeline is up for speculation, but one theory is that while Malenia was out fighting, Miquella had concealed and embedded himself inside the Halic tree. We don't know the exact reason why, but it's believed that Miquella was using his Empyrean blood to grow the Halic tree, while also using the Halic tree to rebirth himself without his curse and ascend to godhood. Either way, before Malenia could return, the demigod Mohg, Lord of Blood, ripped Miquella from his cocoon and stole him away. Mohg wished to have Miquella elevated to godhood with himself as Miquella's consort, but it failed, and Miquella's body is currently a husk in Mogwin Palace. Malenia waited patiently at the foot of where Miquella's cocoon was because she wholeheartedly truly believed that he would return. Her armor's item description has Malenia's exact thoughts, saying, "My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all." Unfortunately, Miquella never emerges from his cocoon and remains dormant and never returns to Malenia while she waits in an almost comatose state for who knows how long. When we the player go to the Halic tree and find Malenia at the roots, she awakens and challenges us. After defeating her, she blooms again, just like at the Battle of Caelid, but this time she fully succumbs to the Scarlet Rot and transforms into the Goddess of Rot, a Scarlet Valkyrie. We defeated her, and her last breath she apologizes to Miquella and says that she's finally met her match. Now that we discussed the majority of Malenia's story, I would love to do some theory crafting and try to get a deeper look into Malenia. Also, I have a few questions that I've always wanted answers, and I'm sure the community may have these questions as well. So the first thing that popped into my mind is, what did Malenia want from fighting with Radon? What was her goal in the Shattering War? What was her motive? First and foremost, we know that the demigods were fighting over the Great Runes after America shattered the Elden Ring. Now, even though we know they were fighting over Great Runes, we know from Kenneth Haidt, who we meet at the beginning of the game, he tells us that Malenia fought Godric and defeated him pretty much easily. And instead of dying, he basically licked Malenia's boots. Malenia didn't kill him. If the whole point of the war is to obtain Great Runes and become Elden Lord, achieve power, what was the point of her not taking his Great Rune? Just that action alone shows us that she's not interested in the Great Runes or becoming Elden Lord. So again, it brings up the question, what was her point in the war? What was she fighting for? We know first and foremost that she loved Miquella and she was devoted to Miquella. So my theory is she was most likely defending the healing tree and Miquella and his goals from these power-hungry demigods. Personally, I think the theory that Malenia was fighting to keep the demigods from attaining power was most likely her main goal. Remember, she wanted to fight for Miquella. She wanted Miquella's goals to become reality. She wanted him to ascend to godhood. Anybody else who stood in his way or could potentially be a threat, I believe that she felt it was in the best interest to take them out. So maybe she didn't see Godric as a true threat. Maybe that's why she let him live. Maybe that's why she wanted to fight Radahn. She knew he would be the final battle. There is another interesting theory that the community has come up with. Some people claim that they believe that Miquella had already gone missing at some point and Malenia was looking for him. Maybe this is why she didn't take the time out to kill Godric after fighting, realizing that Miquella wasn't there. And maybe that's why she fought Radahn, because she believed maybe he had taken Miquella or done something to him. We do know that Mohg took Miquella. We don't know at what point though. We don't have a timeline of the Shattering War. There's a few theories out there, but like I said earlier in the video, I personally believe that while she was fighting, that is when Mohg snuck in and took Miquella. We know for a fact that Malenia would have never let Mohg take Miquella in her presence. We know she was the undefeated swordswoman, and I don't believe Mohg would have even tried it with her, just from reputation alone. So, just thinking that, we can come to the conclusion that he did it secretly or when she was away. This is my thought process as well. Again, we don't have a timeline of when actually he got taken, but yes, I do believe it's possible that she could have been fighting Radahn because she believed that maybe he had stolen Miquella. Remember, he also wanted to fight a true swordsman, someone who could put all of his power to the test and he can prove that he was the strongest in the land. We know he wanted this more than anything. What better way to provoke Malenia than to take Miquella? One theory that I touched upon briefly in the video was the fact that Radahn had stopped the stars. Remember, when he halted the movement of the stars, he prevented the fates of Ranni and by extension Miquella and possibly even the other demigods from moving forward. This could have been a huge hindrance to Miquella, who again was trying to ascend to godhood and rebirth himself using the healing tree. But this is also a theory, but this is what I believe. If this is the case, that also could be a very valid reason for Malenia to defeat Radahn. And maybe that's why she was so desperate to beat him that she bloomed in the middle of their fight. She knew that Radahn had this immense power and was a huge hindrance to Miquella, who she was fully devoted to. This could be a perfect reason as to why she would want to fight him or even participate in the Shattering War. There is a mystery surrounding Malenia, and we get it from an item that after her fight, and we use the remembrance, is called the Scarlet Aeonia Incantation, and it says, Each time the scarlet flower blooms, Malenia's rod advances. It has bloomed twice already. With the third bloom, she will become a true goddess. The question everyone has is, what times did she bloom? And has she bloomed her third time already? This is the question that we all have. I personally theorize that she's only bloomed twice. Like it says, I don't believe that she's bloomed her third time yet, but some people do. Let me explain why, and maybe we can get to the root of it. I believe that her first time blooming was in her fight with Radon. I believe it would be safe to say that this could be considered one of her 2 times, considering how powerful the bloom was. Now, the third time people believe is in her fight with us. I believe that's her second time blooming. Some people don't believe that she bloomed at all during the fight and that it was just her using the spell Scarlet Aeonia, which could be possible, but we don't know for a fact. Some people also believe that her first time blooming was possibly as she was learning the sword from her mentor. Let me elaborate a little bit. We do know that the blind swordsman garbed in blue, he sealed away the outer god of rot, and we know that Malenia is basically a catalyst for this outer god of rot to basically put forth their will. When they said they sealed away the outer god of rot, we know the outer god of rot doesn't have a body or a physical manifestation. So what exactly did they seal? Some people believe that it's possible that he sealed away Malenia for a time. Let me explain why. Some people believe that she bloomed during her fight, maybe during one of her lessons with the swordsman in blue, the blind swordsman, and he sealed her away. We don't have any proof of this in game, but it's definitely a plausible theory. One that I don't necessarily subscribe to, only because there's nothing in the text that said that he basically had to actually fight Malenia, like for real. You know, that was outside of like a training exercise. So everything about the theory, we definitely had to take with a grain of salt. Like I said earlier, I personally believe that she bloomed twice already. The first time was the fight with Radon, and the second time was her fight with us. So with that being said, it's possible that Malenia may not even be dead. Maybe we defeated her, but not truly. They said she will bloom a third time and become a true goddess. Not just a goddess, but a true goddess. Even though she's shown to be the goddess of rot in her fight with us, it's possible it wasn't her final form. Again, this is all theory, so we have to take everything with a grain of salt, but I think this theory is kind of solid. But what do you think? One question that stumps me about Malenia that I still can't quite wrap my head around is, why does she fight us, the Tarnished? Why does she want to fight us? Like, why does she challenge us? I don't understand, only because I feel like we could potentially be allies to her. We don't really have a reason to fight her. Like, she's not in our way, and she's a fully optional boss. She's literally off the main story path. So with that being said, we also could help her find Miquella. We know where Miquella is. You can get to Mogwin Palace before you even go to the Halic Tree. I would even argue that it's easier to get there than her boss fight arena. So with that being said, why wouldn't we be able to tell Malenia where Mog is and how he took Miquella? I personally don't believe that she knows Miquella was taken. I believe she would have been on the warpath if she did know that. The reason I say this is because she's waiting for him to return, but he's not going to return because he was interrupted very abruptly from his cocoon. We can even see what looks like his lifeless body hanging out of the cocoon. But again, Malenia doesn't know this, but we, the Tarnished, do and we can help her. So why she fights us, I can't quite understand. She seems like she could almost be a friendly NPC to us, unless we provoke her, of course. Some theories that people have saying like, hey, you wandered into the Halleck tree and you weren't invited. You know, like we broke into her house basically. Understandable somewhat, I guess. Malenia was never really described as like bloodthirsty or like this warrior always seeking a challenge. We don't quite really even know her character if we really want to get down to it. All we know is that she was heavily devoted to Miquella and his goals. So outside of that, it's really hard to even craft a theory as to why she would want to fight us. Maybe it was a gameplay reason, maybe it was just easier to just have her fight us versus a long drawn out dialogue or something. I'm not quite sure, but I would love to hear any theories that you all may have. Thank you all so much for being here. This is the end of the video. If you made it here, I appreciate you so very much. Hope you all enjoyed. I will definitely be making more videos concerning more topics, telling more short stories, and doing more theory crafting. So yes, thank you all again. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions regarding Malenia, please ask me. I could potentially make another video just answering questions, which I think will be really fun in the future. So stay tuned for my next video. Thank you all so much, and I hope to see you all again.